pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So welcome to tonight's forum for candidates seeking to represent the House District 59. I'm Gary Castor, Managing Editor of the Jefferson City News Tribune, and I'll serve as moderator of tonight's forum. At the table will be Rebecca Martin, News Tribune City Editor. She will serve as timekeeper as well as streaming this forum online. I want to take the opportunity to thank the patrons and officials of the Blair Oaks School District for allowing us to have this forum here. And I'd also like to thank you, those who are here to witness the forum. Prior to tonight, the candidates were advised the rules of the forum. Tonight's forum will include an opening statement, general questions for the candidates, and then closing statements. The candidates will be given 1 minute each for their opening statement. I will then begin asking a series of questions of the candidates. They'll have 2 minutes to respond to each question. None of the questions or topics were shared with the candidates beforehand. During the course of the forum, I may ask a candidate a follow-up question in hopes of getting a clearer understanding of his or her stance. A candidate may also be granted more time to respond or rebut to an answer from a previous question. We ask you to refrain from expressing your support or opposition to a candidate by making applause or making noise. Now let me introduce tonight's candidates. On my right is Rudy Veit, who lives in Wardsville. He's litigated cases and is an attorney for 40 years. He's a Republican candidate for the seat. To my left is Linda Greeson, who lives in Eldon, is a retired teacher and has served as a volunteer on legislative issues on the Missouri Retired Teachers Association for the past 6 years. She's the Democratic candidate for the seat. For the order of the opening and closing statements, we drew lots beforehand, and Linda will begin with her opening statement.
Do I have power?
You have power.
I have power. All right, I am Linda Greeson, and I'm the Democratic candidate for the 59th District, Missouri House of Representatives. My husband, Danny, and I have a small cow-calf operation in Miller County, and as he said, I am a retired teacher. I've spent the last 6 years volunteering with the Missouri Retired Teachers Association on legislative issues, and therein is where my interest comes for filing for this particular seat. I believe that the attacks on public education that are currently taking place in the legislature need to stop, because we never know what child, given a good, free public education, what that child can grow up to be or do or invent or create. Another aspect is Prop A that the voters of the state of Missouri just spoke resoundingly about in the August election. And I think they made the statement as to what they want done with unions, and also state workers' wages. They're, as you know, they are 50 out of 50 ranked in the nation, and I see my time's up. Thanks you for coming.
My name is Rudy Veit. I am running for the 59th District as a Republican. I was raised in St. Thomas. I've lived in Cole County my whole life. I'm married. My wife Jerry and I have 4 children. For the last 40 years, though, I've been working at Carson Call Law Firm. I enjoy going to work there every day. I can help somebody. I can answer a problem. I can give them some relief. That's what I want to do in the legislature, is to continue my work of helping individuals. I have a background that is very conducive to that. I have an ag econ degree with a lot of accounting. I have a law degree, and I have been on the management team of Carson Call probably 35 of the last 40 years. I understand what it is like to operate a small business, and I too have concerns about state wages, public education, but I believe that my background is much broader than just public education and the need for good public education. My background gives me the training and a business background and the experience of representing you in the legislature.
All right, thank you. So we'll start with Rudy with this first question. A year from now, what do you hope to have achieved in your first year as a legislator?
I hope to achieve that I let people know that my door is open. I am there to listen. I believe that the constituents of my district in any given topic know more about it than I do, and they bring those ideas to me. I hope to be able to communicate with the other representatives on both parties and express the interest that we need to work together to get certain issues resolved. I would certainly like to see transportation addressed. I would like to see public education addressed, and I certainly want to see state wages addressed.
All right, thank you. Linda, same question.
Okay, a year from now, I would definitely like to see the state employees have a higher income and to also have the tools that they need, whether it's new computers, computer programs, but they need the tools to do the job with. Current legislature is wanting them to work as a business, and that's great, but they need to, as a business, provide them with the tools. State workers right now are looking at a insurance increase on January the 1st, but yet without a pay increase to go along with that is decreasing the amount of take-home pay that they have, and that in turn is an economic impact on the 59th district because a lot of the state workers would reside in the 59th district. Also, fully funding the foundation formula. And I don't mean the new one that they created so they could so they could say that they had fully funded it. We need the funding of the foundation formula so teachers are not having to use their paycheck in order to buy supplies that they need for the classrooms. It needs to be funded by the state. That's the number 2 thing in our Constitution after the state pays the bills, is to fund public education, so that's a huge priority. Rudy said his door would be open. My door would be open also. Probably one difference there is I tend to go out, if there's would be a bill or an issue, I will go looking for the people that it would directly impact. If it's regarding education, I would be looking for some teachers, superintendents, school board members. If it's regarding unions, I would be looking for union folks asking, okay, what's this actually going to do? Thank you.
All right, so Linda, next question comes to you. So what would be the first bill you plan to file if elected to this position, and why that bill?
I would say with the school, I'm a retired teacher, so you all know that school is a big deal to me. And so it would be with something with the, I wouldn't have the exact wording, but with fully funding that foundation formula. So we can educate because a child in the state of Missouri, I believe, deserves, no matter what, if the poorest home that they come from, they deserve a good, free public education because we never know what they can grow up to be or do or become. And so it would have to do, I would say, with funding education.
All right, Rudy, same question.
Well, I would agree with Linda that funding for education is very important, and we don't want any child not having the opportunity to succeed. However, in talking to the legislatures, and that I know that it takes a little bit of training to get a good bill through, and I would start with some other bill that's not so significant to learn the procedures and make sure when I took on a major bill that I would be prepared to do that. The legislature is a whole world in and of itself with its own set of rules, and I wouldn't want to undertake a major bill of a topic that was crucial without some co-legislature sponsoring it to make sure nothing went wrong in the bill. I certainly have an interest in funding the formula. I have an interest in state setting together an effort to get state pay raises through. I believe that when I first go there, I need to handle a smaller bill, and I need to start working behind the scenes. It's like in the courtroom. You don't win a lawsuit in the courtroom. You win it in being prepared. And I need to start working behind the scenes from day one, working on trying to get a better trained workforce, trying to get teachers trying to get state wages brought to the limelight. There's a crisis there. We've had good representations in the past by our legislatures trying to get it done, and I'm not saying they were inefficient. I'm saying it sometimes takes a major crisis to get people to act. And with state pay, retention of employees, and proper technology for the state, that is getting to be more and more apparent. We cannot expect state workers to be that efficient when we are giving them antiquated equipment to work with. We wouldn't use that in our business. I want to start behind scenes to bring those things to the limelight. Not every representative has as many state employees or as concerned about state wages as we are.
All right. Rudy, next question. What issue that requires legislative action do you believe has largely been ignored by previous legislators, the public, the media, and explain why it shouldn't be ignored? One subject.
That's a tough one. Why it's been totally ignored. We've had a lot of issues out there. I guess the issue that has been partially ignored, and that is back into the education, how we can say we funded the school formula and at the same time not take care of transportation. In the school districts I have worked with, that has been an issue. Another issue that I think that really I think has been ignored, and I've learned this by visiting the various superintendents of the district and the importance of it, and that is we make a special effort to get training for children from kindergarten or even earlier, those that have special learning disabilities or seem to be behind in a given topic, that we have more legislation starting at day one with getting our young children trained and whatever deficiency they have to help them with it. Because a child, once it's in the 3rd or 4th grade and has reading problems, it's probably a long way behind the ball already. So I would appreciate, if I had some topic that I would want more effort put into, more legislation and more money that is not now addressed, it would be education and training for and testing of our very young students.
All right, thank you. Linda, same question.
Okay, yes, I agree with the education issue, but I think on the infrastructure issue of broadband, getting it out across the rural areas of the state of Missouri, and I live with that daily because I live in a very rural area in Miller County. And the legislature has been giving tax breaks, preparing tax breaks for large corporations, trying to attract business to the state. And I think that broadband is just going to be a necessity that if businesses are going to come here and build factories, that's going to definitely be a requirement. So I think the one thing that I've not seen much movement on in the legislature is getting the state equipped with broadband statewide.
All right, thank you. Next question, we'll start with Linda. Little housekeeping thing. Remind myself as well as you, please hold the microphone close to your mouth so we can hear your answers clearly. So next question, we'll start with Linda. It's from one of our readers, Sue Gibson. She says, do you believe the August vote against Prop A, the right to work proposition, should be respected and considered settled as per the will of the people, or that the state legislature should keep trying to pass right to work legislation?
I believe it. Can you hear me with it here? Is this good?
Yes.
I believe it was settled by the voters in the state in August. They overwhelmingly said what they wanted done about that. And I really don't think the legislature needs to be coming along this very next session and trying to go ahead and pass a bill to override the wishes of the voters of the state.
All right, thank you. Rudy, same question.
As I said before the election, it was up to the people. They have voted. With me, that's a settled issue. How many years before it gets brought up again, I'm not certain. But we have to respect the vote of the people, and also take into consideration maybe time changes. But right now, the people have spoken, and this certainly, I think, gives the unions time to regroup. And if they want to stay in existence, they have to work more in showing they have a marketable product. Trained workers, skilled workers, reliable workers, which they're working on. I don't think the legislature will continue to be the safeguard for the unions 10 years down the road from now, but they may well be. But for now, the issue to me is closed. We voted.
All right, thank you. Rudy, we'll start with you on this question. Another proposition question. Prop D is on the November 6th ballot, seeking an increase in the state's fuels tax to fund roads and bridges. Do you support it? If so, why? And is it enough to address the issue? If you oppose it, why and what would be a better option?
I support it, and I believe that we should have been doing something for a long time. It's called personal responsibility. We as a government and a people have an obligation to fix our roads, to fix our buildings, and not pass that debt down to our children. I believe that whether it is enough, that is something we will determine after it comes into existence. A lot of people that I've talked to in the business don't think it's going to be adequate, but it is a starting point, and we need to start from there. We also then now need to look at how we're going to spend the money and look at what is feasible to correct, what is needed, and take all things off the table, whether it's asphalt, concrete, or whatever. Look at new opportunities. When you go on our roads and see the 3-lane roads with the pass lanes, that's something new. That may be an answer for some of these roads, but certainly it is long past that we should have been raising money and spending money on our roads, and it is wrong that we have passing this debt down and we're trying to pass it to our children. Good roads are needed for economic development in all of our rural areas. It will bring business to our rural areas. It will make our businesses more efficient. It alone will be an economic stimulus when we build the roads. I think it is very, very, very important that we pass it, and I would be gravely disappointed if people don't realize that it's our responsibility to fix it. I've heard people complain that, well, the highway department didn't do something in the past. I don't care whether they did or didn't do it. It's under our watch that it happened. We have an obligation to build our roads, protect our roads, have good roads, and not pass the debt down to our kids. And like I said, it is good. It will be a good economic stimulus and will bring business. We cannot continue to see how little we can spend on the roads and get by and make them last another day. It is time to do something.
Thank you. Linda, same question.
Okay, Prop D, the fuels tax. Yes, I agree with that. The increase is coming over several years, so it's not a shock of all of a sudden a huge amount added on. But definitely the roads we've talked about here, the transportation system is needed in order to have economic development. The safe roads are needed for our public schools, for our school buses to travel on. So I will be voting yes on that.
All right, thank you. Linda, this next question will start with you. Both of you have made reference to state worker pay. So how do you plan to convince lawmakers from other parts of the state that Missouri's government employees need better pay and benefits packages?
Okay, the legislators from the other parts of the state, well, obviously if they're a legislator, they have an office here in Jeff City, and some of those state workers are working for them. Of all people, they can see right there in the Capitol and around Jefferson City. I think it's a matter of us that are local here just educating them as to the needs of what the state workers need. And of course, there are state workers in other parts of the state around, and they should also, I think part of the education would be to explain to them that if their wages are higher, that's more money in the economy in your area, wherever you're located in the state. And again, the benefits package regarding their insurance, and also state workers need the tools to do the job with. You might give them a huge raise, but then keep them with an old 5-year-old computer or something like that. I think there's a need for the tools also. But I believe my answer would be, as a teacher, it's a matter of educating the other legislators.
Rudy?
Well, I've already spoken on this and had already talked to various people involved with the state, and we have to realize that not every legislature has the same priorities as we do for state wages. I believe we need to start from the very beginning of the term and not wait until the end of the legislative session to see what money is available. we have to show that it is getting to be a crisis, and that means we need to talk to every legislature, and we need to work with the various state agencies to show what the turnover is, how the turnover is costing us money. Retention can save money, can save skill and money. And so we use one to show what it's costing us by losing all the state workers, and two, show them what additional salaries means for the general economy, particularly our area, but for every area. You know, state worker, if he makes $1, that money turns into the economy probably 6 or 7 times. And so they're getting taxes on all that, so it isn't that much a cost as we think it is. But we need to start at the beginning of our session and get data together to show what agencies, what the retention rate is, and what people are leaving. Every agency I've talked to, from the attorneys that work for the government, from the engineers, to the staff, to the accountants, they're having a huge turnover, and they cannot really fill them. At the Jeff City Correctional Centers now, I think they're at 850 some vacancies in employees, and that's up 150 from about 2 months ago. And you know, we cannot have that happening. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. And we see riots in our prison, and we need good workers there as everywhere to help to train the prisoners and get them not be just boarded there and turned loose and coming back. So I believe it's a matter of education, and it is certainly a matter of a lot of work.
Thank you. Rudy, this question comes from Mark Redding here in the audience. It's been a long time since a Jefferson City State Representative served on a budget or appropriations committee. State salaries are 50th from 2017 to 2019. The budget is converting $146 million of Missouri Consolidated Health Care reserves to other state spending. Do you have the time or interest to serve on the appropriations committee?
My goal is to, one, I want to be on the Judicial Committee. I also want to be on the Agricultural Committee, which through the Agricultural Committee is a way to get on the Budget Committee. There are a lot of people who want on the Budget Committee, but there is a specific position on the Agricultural Committee to be on the Budget Committee. I want to be on the Budget Committee. I have more than 9 hours of accounting. I have econ courses. I have stat courses. I ran a business, and I understand what a budget is. And I think that that is a desire of mine, to study the budget, to see where there's money being wasted, see where money can be saved, and then point out why we need certain increases in given areas of our state agencies. So I do have a desire to be on the Budget Committee.
Linda.
Okay, and your question was, do I have the time? Yes, I do. I'm retired. And I don't claim to know everything about the state budget, but I am willing to learn. And whether I'm on the Budget Committee or not, if I am your representative, I will be studying that budget closely. The Appropriations Committee also, both would be areas of interest. I really don't know why this area has not had someone work up to that level on that. But I would be very interested in that, and I do have the time because I'm retired.
Okay, we're going to circle back on the state pay thing. As I think about it more, and Rudy, you brought up a good point with corrections as an example of there's a growing crisis there of too few corrections officers, in large part because of the pay and conditions there. So circling back, if we're talking about an appropriations committee and either one of you are on it, there's a limited budget. And so when we talk about early on about foundation formula funding, we want to fully fund it, not what the legislature did. When we talk about corrections, it often becomes we need to build another prison. So that's what makes it, I think, for a lot of folks who live in this area, that makes it difficult to elevate the state pay discussion beyond, yeah, it stinks that we're 50th, but maybe next year. So what's your response of how you deal with legislators to convince them that next year is now on state pay?
Is that my question?
Yes, sir.
Well, First is I believe that we need to show them what it's costing us with the loss of employees by not having good retention. I believe that we can see with the other areas of the state what the problems are they're encountering, and so we show them, one, it isn't as costly as they think it is, because we're going to be more efficient with good technology. We're going to have less turnover, and so we have less training costs. It costs somewhere between, I think, $5,000 or $8,000 for a prison guard in the first 3 months, and then we lose in the first 6 months about 50% of them. So getting state pay raises is going to take a way of educating them that it's not that expensive. And on the foundation formula, even the existing one, there are times when there's discussions not willing to meet that. We expect our school boards and our school districts to have balanced budgets. They make a budget based upon what the state has promised them in the formula. When that doesn't happen, our schools are put in a real bind. And so those are things that we're going to have to figure out that we have to take care of. Schools, and you cannot not fund the formula or stop halfway through the year and tell a school board, now you cut your pay. They have a budget also. Where the additional money is going to come from, those are things we're going to have to look. If the economy improves, that will help, but that's always the case. The taxes on internet sales should help. And then we may have to sit down and look at ways that we can raise revenue in a neutral manner by not overtaxing one particular area of the society.
Linda?
Okay, the question is that next year is now regarding the state wages, both for state workers and corrections?
No, it's state workers.
State
workers.
Oh,
yes.
just state workers. Okay. I think the climate that they're working in is not as positive as it could be, and that may take looking at some of the leadership in some of the various departments around the state agencies to improve the work climate. As he had said also, it's going to take a close look at the budget, and that's just something that we've not had our hands on yet to see exactly where money is going to. And was there another part to that question?
No, there wasn't.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Linda, this question will start with you. From our reader, Scott Randolph. Oh, sorry, I'm going to skip that one, sorry. Scott, will come back to your question in a moment. State government officials have been criticized as being too tied to lobbyists and dark money contributions. Is that a fair assessment? What sort of reforms would you support to allay voters' fears, and what pledges would you make regarding your personal behavior when it comes to accepting gifts, contributions, or favors?
Yes, I believe dark money is very much involved in the politics in the state of Missouri. And every time that the voters go out and vote for a candidate who has accepted money from PACs out of state that you're not able to trace the money back front to and see where the money came from, you're voting for the dark money to be the king of Missouri. And personally, I do not have dark money. Anyone can look at the Missouri Ethics Commission and see that my funds are not great, like some candidates across the state. Their funds are huge, but I have no plans to accept dark money. The money I have accepted has been from people that I know.
All right, Rudy, same question.
Can you repeat that?
Yes. State government officials have been criticized as being too tied to lobbyists and dark money contributions. Is that a fair assessment? What sort of reforms would you support to allay voters' fears, and what pledges would you make regarding your personal behavior when it comes to accepting gifts, contributions, and favors?
Well, to start with on the ethics, when I was studying for the bar, my senior partner at the time told me, forget that all. If it smells bad, it probably is bad. And that was the easiest way to understand what ethics were. But as to relying upon lobbyists, that is now something that just about you have to have some information from lobbyists, because with term limits, no one's up there with a long history. So there is a more reliance upon lobbyists for information. It doesn't mean you have to rely upon them for money. Dark money, all those things. I haven't taken any dark money. My race probably isn't important enough to people to even come up with dark money. But as a legislature, that's something we're going to have to address. And it's easier said than done, because we've had several recent Supreme Court cases indicating what we can do and cannot do. And we also have to keep in mind with contributions to candidates that we cannot limit them to the extent that only the rich can run for office. It is a very expensive proposition running for legislature now, and certainly for statewide races. So we cannot limit their sources of income from individuals in that to the extent that they cannot afford to run. There's as everything, there's two sides to it. One is you don't want to rely upon lobbyists, but they are the ones who know the history. They are the ones who can give you the information. You just have to do it just like you do in any legal matter. You hear both sides of it. And so make sure you talk to all the lobbyists. But a history of bills and that, a lot of times you need lobbyists to rely upon. Taking dark money, I'm opposed to it. I'm opposed to dark money, period. I think we need a better accounting system, so when you look at where a candidate receives money from, it ought to say who put it there. Because there are some major races out there where there are huge amounts of money running, and I would like to say that $1 million contribution to me wouldn't affect my thought process whatsoever, but I think that would probably be misguided.
All right, thank you. Rudy, this question goes to you. We'll start with you. From reader Scott Randolph, for Mr. Veit, you have stated in other forums that you are opposed to using taxpayer money for school vouchers or charter schools, although that conflicts with positions taken by your party at a state and federal level. Will you stand by your statement if elected?
I stand by that statement. I have again looked at it and thought about it, and I've heard their arguments, well, what about the child is in a district that isn't up to par and the parents want to move him? What about all those children left behind? Does that mean those that can afford to put their children in a private school, the state should pay for that? Because we know when you go to a private school, charter school or not, there usually are additional costs, transportation, et cetera. A school district is responsible for for providing an education for the kids in that district. And the school district is made up by the input of parents and the people in that district. They have a responsibility not to rely upon us at Jeff City to give them a break or to take care of their problems. They need to address how their school district is run. The legislature has a role, though, to fully fund the program and to support them in their educational purposes. But I still feel that, and I know that's contrary to what some of the Republicans I've talked to, I still feel we cannot let the poor children, those who can't afford to move to the charter schools, left behind. Once we take children out of a public school system, we reduce or increase the fixed cost per child. Because if we have 900 kids here today and tomorrow we have 500, we're still going to have a certain amount of fixed costs. That's going to cost the taxes to go up, and the people in the district, when their kids are in a charter school, are not going to vote for increased taxes. So my own opinion, and I will be open to listen, they can prove me I'm wrong, people have done it all the time, but my position is that we need to have good public education, and that is the backbone of our society, and it is the best way to allow children, if given the opportunity and they have the desire, for them to become what they want to become.
All right, thank you. Linda, how would you ensure that every child in Missouri, in both rural and urban areas, has equal access to a quality education? And how do we attract and keep the best teachers to achieve these goals?
Well, we've got to fully fund that foundation formula in order for schools all across the state to have the funds to educate the kids. I think you will attract your teachers and keep your teachers once that formula is fully funded and there's money there to buy textbooks and supplies and the teachers are not having to dig in their own pocket. in order to buy what they need for their classroom. Of course, teachers, you do not get wealthy teaching school, so we need some increase in the salaries and wages for teachers. But another aspect for teachers that I think keeps some of them in the classroom is having that defined benefit pension. So after 30 years, they're able to retire and know that their money has been pooled with other teachers' money, and they're going to have an income and they can live securely in their later years. I think those are the three main things to attract and keep teachers.
All right. Rudy, I'll give you a minute to respond to the second part of that question. Scott had rolled all of these into one big question. How do we attract and keep the best teachers to achieve these goals of ensuring that every child has equal access to a quality education?
Well, there again, let's start with the local school boards setting up an environment. Giving money and throwing money at a district in and of itself doesn't guarantee us anything. We've tried that in Kansas City and St. Louis. But we have to give them adequate money so the school boards can create an environment where people want to teach there. We have to have school boards authority to pay teachers within their budget. Remember, teachers' salary are not set by the state. Different districts pay different amounts of money. So that's up to the school board. And as a state, we cannot dictate what they pay their teachers. Again, so a lot of those are decisions of the district, how they allocate their money, what they're willing to spend for teachers, and what are they willing to do for their own local tax assessment. Different districts have different tax rates. For me to set up in the legislature and tell Blair Oaks what to pay their teachers to have good teachers isn't going to work. Our school board knows what they need.
All right, thank you. Linda, next question comes to you. This comes from Barbara Reading here in the audience. What do you believe should be done to reduce gun violence in Missouri?
Gun violence in Missouri. Boy, I'm glad we don't have anything on the news today, and I pray that we never have another incident in the state of Missouri regarding that. I've been in conversation with some law enforcement people because they obviously are the first on the line online in such a situation. And the thing that seems to surface there is we need some more mental health. There are kind of red flags that are seen, most of these shooters, and we need some more places to refer these folks to and people to be able to and sometimes people do, whether it's family members or educators, say, I'm really concerned about this student and we need some places to go and get some help for those folks.
Rudy?
One of my areas of gun violence concern is in schools. I believe we need to have resource officers in more schools. Again, that is a decision of the school board. As a state, we could provide for programs for training for retired police officers, for retired military people, to get the training they need and make more of these people available for schools to hire trained resource officers. That the state could do. Even if we weren't the ones paying for them, we could do the training and make sure that it's available. I agree in mental health, but that's, that's a gray area also, though. Where do you draw the line? Who determines someone is mentally competent or, we certainly need a place so that we can send people if they have mental conditions and they can be diagnosed and treated. That comes from a little bit with better medical care and more opportunities for people to receive medical care. I just believe that is a very tough issue, and so we have to be proactive on our schools, do those things to promote safety at our events, and use of more resource officers and making more resource officers available by offering them the opportunity for training, because just because you're a retired policeman doesn't mean you're qualified to go into be a resource officer with a school. There are certain challenges there. We need to train these people. Same with military. Whether or not there are guns in the school, teachers, that is something purely up to the school districts. They know their district better than we do.
All right, a follow-up question would be, what's your position on gun rights? Linda, we'll start with you. What's your position on should gun rights be further restricted than they are currently?
Oh,
and if so, how?
I thought you said gun violence.
Oh, gun rights.
Gun rights. I believe in the Second Amendment, and we do have guns. We are, as I said, we're a farming family. But I just think something has got to happen here. We've got to have some things done because we cannot go on having whether it's gun violence, whether it's a school shooting, and most of you probably know that a large percentage of suicides come under the gun violence statistics that you look at. But we need something done there, and I still think, and maybe this is because I'm a retired school counselor, I still think it's going to come back to more mental health issues, which again, just like he said, that comes back to health care and having availability of that to folks.
Rudy?
Well, certainly I have guns, and I respect the right that people own and carry guns. Now, whether there are some reasonable limitations placed upon that, for instance, I took a class for my conceal and carry. My daughter took a class for conceal and carry, and I think the main thing she learned is that she wasn't ready to carry a pistol without a whole lot more training. But as far as, I've heard all the arguments from both sides. There's not guns that kill people and all of that. I think that we need to look at whatever is reasonable basis to take things to curtail mass violence. And again, most of those people who do it have a mental issue. Recognizing that is a start. How we get that addressed is more of a challenge.
All right. We have another question from a reader. In the past, this will go to Rudy first. In the past, the legislature has focused on cutting corporate and high-income tax rates as a way to encourage economic growth. Yet many companies cite the need for adequate transportation, infrastructure, health care, public and higher education, and state government services as essential to determining where they locate. If elected, what would be your approach to expanding economic development in the state?
The last part, developing income.
What would be your approach to expanding economic development in the state?
Well, we have seen, and I'm not a fan of taxes, but we have seen from past that lowering taxes in certain areas is an economic stimulus. It gives the corporations the ability to expand. It gives the individual ability to spend more money. And through the stimulus, we generate more taxes and a better economy. That has just been done. The economy seems to be improving. But if those don't work, then we may have to look at alternatives to ways at arriving at additional income for schools, additional income for our roads. We have certain basics we need to meet, and we have to take whatever steps necessary to obtain the appropriate revenue. I don't think that people are as opposed to taxes are as they opposed to waste, and they want us to use our money wisely and believe that a vibrant economy will raise more money. We've seen that from the past. It will raise more money for those programs. Sometimes, as far as what we're seeing on roads and that now, we're going to have to raise some taxes. They're a necessary evil. If we have to do something to fund our schools because our stimulus package cutting corporate income tax and certain individual taxes is not working sufficient, that's something we're going to have to address. We cannot say we can't do it just because we don't have money. But I think we really have to try to get it through economic development.
Linda?
Okay, I think we have won the race to the bottom as far as corporate tax breaks. And I think it's time for those corporate tax breaks to stop, and it's time to work on just what you listed off there: transportation, health care, public education, higher education. Those are the things that corporations are saying they want and they need in an area before they come into there, before they come in and invest in that particular area. And so it's time for us to take a look at those and put our money there and invest in those. And again, I will say regarding the infrastructure, that broadband business. Thank you.
All right, well, we're going to circle back to broadband as the next question, so we'll start with you. The fear is that an inequity exists and is worsening between rural areas and metropolitan areas when it comes to broadband service. As we become more reliant on broadband, who's responsible for getting broadband to rural customers? Do you foresee obstacles improving broadband service in rural areas? And ultimately, what is government's role in this issue?
Okay, here's what I see on the broadband being in a rural area without it. Our electricity is serviced by a co-op. And just west of us is another co-op that probably equal amount of folks live in that area. And the electric co-op picked it up and ran with it, and they have it installed for all of their customers in that area. Now, twice I have visited with folks, board member and the president of the board of our co-op that we get our electricity through, and I'm just given the answer of, well, it's cost prohibitive. But I have not seen a survey, I've not seen any numbers, and I often wonder, well, I wonder what he thinks cost prohibitive is. But it is a necessity. It's not only a necessity to get corporations or businesses in to build in the rural areas, but it's becoming a necessity for farmers out there with the equipment and things that they have and the needs that they have. And as far as government, I don't know that government needs to sink actual tax dollars into that, but there needs to be some encouragement of some sort. Maybe it would be in a sense, maybe it would be tax breaks, but there needs to be some encouragement to the electric co-ops and to the for-profit electric companies in order for them to come in and put that in across the state, I think, because I've seen a little bit of it happen.
Rudy?
Broadband and good cell service is critical for rural growth. I've talked to real estate people, and when they sell a home, the question is not do you have TV or satellite, is do you have broadband? Can we get Wi-Fi? We need it in rural areas to stimulate our health care, where we can have telemedicine. We need it in our rural areas so that people who want to work for corporations and work from home can work from home. They're willing to move to those areas. We need it in that area for farmers to be able to get on the internet. We need it in that area for people who work in the city and want to go home. People that have jobs want to go home and get on the internet. And she's correct, it's correct that north of here there is a co-op that started several years ago, and they are very successful at it. Other co-ops say they can't do it. But again, it may take a government incentive. I have talked to a broadband provider who their company does it in 20 countries, and I forget how many states. And my answer was, well, why aren't we all satellite versus they're running cable? I would think cable would be out of date. But he explains to me that that is the best way to do it. That's another area, again, where I don't know all the technical answers. I know that it's got to happen. And we have to start looking at different entities to see how to make it happen. I listened to them, and they told me that, they're running a certain amount of cable every day, and they got so many people they have to serve. And even when they go through rural areas, certain areas, only 30 to 40% hook up. And that's partly because of the cost. But they have a low rate now of $45 a month at some deal, and still people aren't hooking up. But I know that if we're going to have any development in rural America, we have to make it where people want to live, and they can't live if they can't get Wi-Fi and check their emails and that at home. Doctors need to be able to work in that area. Telemedicine is coming. I think it's something we have to say there is a problem, and we can get it solved one way or the other.
All right, thank you. Again, I'm going to remind you to hold the microphone close to your mouth so we can hear you clearly. All right, so our next question, we're going to start with Rudy. This is a multi-point question.
It's complicated.
It's complicated, yeah. It's actually several different subjects, and I'm going to ask you to take 30 seconds because it's a 1 or 2 sentence answer is all I want from you on it, okay? So, for instance, what do you believe is the biggest issue facing our schools, and how would you try to address it as a legislator? So we'll start with Rudy.
I believe the biggest crisis we have in our schools is partially money, but mainly it is getting students active and students wanting to participate and students wanting to go there. Therefore, we need to get more programs involved. We've done wonders here at Blair Oaks with FFA. 90-some people had joined the first year. Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, 4-H, special training classes. So if someone wants to study welding, they can. Get the children involved. That encourages parents to get involved.
Linda, same question.
Well, since I'm retired and not in the trenches where the teachers are, on the outside looking in, it looks to me like the biggest school issue would be security of your buildings. And like we talked about earlier, the school shooters and this sort of thing. Keep those kids safe. They cannot learn in an environment where they do not feel safe.
All right. Next question. We'll start with Linda. What do you believe is the biggest issue facing the criminal justice system, and how would you try to address it as a legislator?
The criminal justice system, now I'm taking that to be prisons.
It can be anything from sheriff's departments all the way to prisons.
Well, probably sheriff's departments, whether it's the county sheriff, it's the city police, the folks working in the prisons. It looks to me like pay, salaries. They are putting their life on the line every day, and we need to stop and look at where we're putting our money in other areas, and we need to reward those folks for being willing to step up and do that.
Okay. I'm going to give you another 30 seconds. How would you address it as a legislator? Because in police and county, as an example, those are municipalities that pay their salaries. So how would you address the issue as a legislator?
As a legislator, probably needs to be some direction came from the legislature in order to make it more viable for those areas, whether it's county or city, to be able to accomplish that.
Fair enough. Rudy?
Well, I was at the Capitol last week when they passed the bill on the different types of courts. That is a big way. With the drug court, the DWI court, we have veterans court, and the various courts, so that our court systems are equipped to help keep people out of prison. Going to prison generally doesn't bring that many people out in a better condition. The second thing is the state has to pay the counties for holding inmates. Every sheriff I've talked to says it's a losing proposition. They get paid less and less, and therefore they're spending all their money on taking care of prisoners instead of patrolling the streets and doing the things they need to do.
All right. Rudy, what do you believe is the biggest issue facing health care, and how would you address it as a legislator?
In talking to doctors and the hospitals, there are several issues. One is they don't have sufficient money to operate the hospitals. They have a lot of people they have to treat which cannot pay, and they do that. Healthcare, we have to address the amount of money that goes from the insurance company to the doctor and what the doctor actually charges. The bureaucracy of staff it takes now just to treat a patient is more than sometimes they get paid.
Linda, same question.
Okay, regarding health care, I think it's the availability to the poor folks. And I was really disappointed when the legislature did not expand Medicaid and try to include more folks in that in order to be able to get diagnoses and treatment early on before it was fatal or before it was a very expensive cost to treat them.
All right. Linda, next question goes to you. What do you believe is the biggest issue facing senior citizens, and how would you address it as a legislator?
Well, as I look around the state, I see a lot of senior citizens working jobs that few years ago were held by teenagers and young folks with first jobs. And I think the point there is they're trying to live on Social Security. They did not have or do not have any sort of a pension available from wherever the place is that they have worked. And I would like to see more done to encourage businesses to have defined benefit pensions.
All right. Rudy, same question.
I think the major thing I see with senior citizens is health care. They cannot afford the insurance. They have high deductibles, and there are limitations to what they can receive. There are so many things there isn't care for them. I mean, if they have in-home care, and at times they have to pay it for themselves. But health care is their major issue. They have second jobs, sometimes just so they can maintain insurance. They have second jobs so that their spouse can be covered on their insurance. I think the number one thing that crosses their mind is health care.
All right. Rudy, what do you believe is the biggest issue facing low-income families, and how would you address it?
With low-income families, I think there again, they have a real concern of health care. They have a concern for facilities. They have a concern that they lack optimism of a way to get out of it. And that's how we have to improve opportunities, training for their children, getting their children into programs where they learn and can be self-sufficient.
Linda, same question.
I think for the low-income families, it's a matter of having a roof over your head and food for your family. And as legislators, we need to address those issues statewide with encouraging whatever programs are available. For instance, the backpack food program that currently is across the state that allows kids to take food home for the weekend. But I think those are the two things, a roof over their head and food.
All right. Last one of these questions goes to Linda. What do you believe is the biggest issue facing middle-income families, and how would you address it?
Middle-income families, it's a struggle to be middle-income any longer, I believe, in the United States. A lot of middle-income families may consider themselves middle-income, but I think they are slowly sliding into poverty. I think there's a very big discrepancy between the haves and the have-nots, where as a country we're definitely getting a huge division there. There just really are not so many middle-income families.
All right. Rudy, same question.
Well, some of the same issues are for middle-class families in that now so many of our policies of insurance have $6,000 and $12,000 deductibles. That's a major challenge for them. Making sure their children get a good education is a challenge for them, and they may be middle income, but they're worried about job security and what opportunity their children are going to have.
All right. So this is going to be my last question for both of you. You'll have 2 minutes for this question. So if either one of you will be elected to the legislature, what is going to be the one thing that's going to cause you sleepless nights once you've assumed office? We start with Rudy.
I guess that which will cause me the most loss of sleep will be the inability to get things done that I want done. The recognizing that I have great expectations and we're going to hit a lot of roadblocks. I certainly want to put a lot of effort into economic development, because I think if we have a good economy and good economic development, some of the problems around us will be relieved. It will help on education, it will help on health care, it will help on even the crime rate. So getting people to be logical and put aside their own political politics and even the different politics within the party to sit down and work for the common good of Missouri and the district is what's going to cause me the greatest concern, is that I will go with great expectations and I will run against walls and I will just feel frustrated. But I will keep going.
All right. Linda, same question.
I would say basically the same thing. What would give you sleepless nights is when I think, why don't they understand? Why can't they see what we're trying to do here? And but I would, just as he said, go with great expectations and keep on working at it and hope that the next morning maybe what I had to say to them might be able to persuade them to at least stop and consider, instead of this attitude of my way or the highway.
Very good. Okay, so we'll start with our closing statements. Linda, you will have the opportunity to give your closing statement first. You'll have a minute.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank all of you for spending your time, because I know your time is valuable, spending it here tonight. And I appreciate you doing your homework. by coming out and listening to us, and I hope you will attend the other forums also and do your homework before you go to the polls on November the 6th. I would greatly appreciate your vote on November the 6th also. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Linda. And Rudy, you have your opportunity.
I want to say thank yous for all that stuff too, but I don't want to use my whole minute. I respectfully request your votes in that I believe that my years as a lawyer, as a small businessman, and I have driven trucks, I have worked on roofs, I have been a roofer, I have been a carpenter, I have laid carpet. My broad background and raising 4 children and putting them through school, I understand the challenges of life, and I understand the challenges of this district. I have lived here my whole life. I understand, I've lived on a farm, and I believe I understand your problems, and more importantly, I've always enjoyed solving problems and helping people. I want the opportunity to continue that, just in a different manner. I will go to the legislature, I will listen, I will be your voice, and I will try to every day when someone has a problem to make it a little bit easier for you.
Thank you. On behalf of the News Tribune and Blair Oaks School District, I want to thank the candidates for coming to this forum, as well as those who have attended here, as well as viewed online. And I agree with both the candidates. It's incredibly important that you educate yourself for this November 6th election. There are a variety of very important races and propositions on the ballot. We at the News Tribune offer voters the opportunity to send questions to us at vote@newstribune.com, in which we will then turn around and ask, in this particular case, Linda and Rudy questions that we may not have asked. And again, the intent is to give the fullest view of the candidates, where they stand and how they believe they can serve us in the legislature. So again, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for participating, and have a good evening.
And thank you, Carson.